Welcome to Art at the Cave. We've been here since about 2017. We change out the shows monthly. There's always something new every month. The next show is Chaz Martin and Don Gray. So that will be a great show. This is one of Chaz's pieces, and we'll hear from him later today. And then just some basic needs. There's a bathroom in the far, far back. If you need it, feel free to come and go as you need and enjoy the talk. We're going to start off with Jill Pelto.
All right, hello everyone. I'm excited to be here. So my name is Jill, and I am currently based in the Tri-Cities in Washington. And my piece is primarily a watercolor painting with some details and colored pencil and Conte. And I'm going to give just a little bit of context for what I do as an artist to begin. So my work is primarily about communicating climate change or other environmental topics with people and using kind of the beauty and emotion of art to help me tell those stories. And so that's not just like the kind of overwhelming and bad changes, that could be like positive and hopeful changes as well. But this particular painting has a lot of story and context and was a big part of why I wanted to submit it into the show when I learned about it. And so I'll talk through some of the details, which may be a little bit hard to see in the back, but this is supposed to be a mountain scene here in the North Cascades region. And in the foreground, this is all like glacier ice. And so a lot of what I do with my work is I also have through a master's in climate science. And so that is where a lot of my work comes from, is like being in that science world, knowing that as a scientist, there's so much emotion behind the research that we do, but that's not going to come forward into something like a scientific paper. And so finding ways to express that now as a full-time artist. And so what I do is incorporate a lot of different types of actual or of real graphs and data or maps or things like that in my work. And so on top of the ice here is a data line. So it's just a graph line showing from about 1980 down to present day, the amount of the loss of ice, basically, of the glaciers, specifically here in the North Cascades. And so just year to year, their change and their melt. And so that story is one I wanted to tell because unlike most of my work, that's research that I helped do. I got back like 3 days ago from 3 weeks of backpacking here in the North Cascades and doing this research myself. It's a project that is really personal to me because I grew up with this opportunity. My dad leads the project. It's called the North Cascade Glacier Climate Project. And so this was the 40th field season, which is really huge, and my 15th year doing this work. And so we go out and just kind of do the ground truth of like how much of these glaciers retreated, how much like ice has like thinned down kind of on the mountain sides, like how is this affecting the ecosystem? And there's all these aspects that are really important to that story. And when I was in college and first trying to find ways to combine science and art, the very first painting I made that used data was about the same topic, but it was in 2015. So now a chunk of time has passed since then. I kind of recreated this painting, so it's kind of partly where I'm going as an artist, and my personal style has evolved from the first glacier data painting that I made to this one here today. But also it's a story about where these glaciers and this whole region that relies on water from them is going. And so I tried to highlight just all the beauty and power and what this landscape means to me as someone who gets to go to these places and see them and experience them. And a lot of them some of them are not accessible, but a lot of them are pretty accessible for people. And that feels really magical. And so this graph line is hard for me. There's a lot of emotion behind it, but that's not all I was trying to highlight with the story. I also wanted to show just the fact that we're able to know this information. We're able to go out there and learn about these places so intimately, and like finding a way to communicate that as an artist is really an honor. And kind of coming back from that work now, it's especially fresh in my brain because this was a tough year for the glaciers. So thank you all very much.
I'm Chaz Martin. I call myself a painter and sculptor because I used to be a painter and now I'm a sculptor. When I was painting, I was always trying to make things three-dimensional, and now that I'm a sculptor, I'm always painting things. So I'm constantly moving back and forth across that border. My goal with every piece is to do something unique, something I've never done before. This piece is about maybe 5, 6 years old. And this one was unique for two reasons. One, it's a form that I had never done before. But second, this is maybe the only piece that I have ever done that had no sketches. I just started creating it. The process that I use, all of these figures, every edge you see is a wire. And in its armature form, this is a line drawing in space. As such, I can move arms, legs, heads, complete gestures. And until I find the gesture that I'm looking for, the movement that I'm looking for, I just keep playing with it. But when I get to that point where I see something that is really unique, expressive, different, then I begin putting the skin over the top of it. And until I do that, I'm not committed. Usually I will leave a piece on a turntable for 1 to 3 weeks. And every time I walk past it, I'll yank on an arm, push a leg, do something with it. And they're probably thinking, leave me alone. This one, however, I saw this part of the form and I knew this was going to happen. I knew this was going to happen. I didn't know where this guy came from. It was kind of an afterthought. But in the end, it's probably, literally the icing on the cake. If there's one thing that is probably my signature, it's imagination. I teach a lot of classes. I teach my techniques to anybody. I'm not worried about anybody copying my imagination. Most pieces that I create, I have 4x6 sketchbooks everywhere. In my car, by my bed, in my studio, in the living room, in the kitchen. And I never seem to have one when I want it. But I'll carry an idea through 5 or 6 different sketchbooks, and there might be 3 pages here, 2 pages there, 6 pages there. It's not uncommon to do 30, 40 sketches before I actually start with the wire. And in that process, I'm constantly asking the same 3 questions. What if? What if I change this? What if I change that? Or what else can I do? So it's what if, what else, and why not? And that's the process. With every sketch, I look at it, I ask the question again, and I modify it again. And if I don't find an answer, I do the same sketch again. But in the process of doing that same sketch, something changes. And the next sketch, something else changes, and something else changes. And at some point, I see that unique spark that I haven't seen before. When I find that, I'm ready to go. So the building it, I claim that if you're not creating problems to solve, you're not being very creative. So my whole process is creating problems and then trying to figure out how to solve them. But in the process of doing that, at this point now, there's a degree of spontaneity because I've solved a lot of different problems a lot of different ways. I think I have enough of a grasp on the techniques now that when I hit a wall with something, it's not doing what I want it to do, I can switch gears quickly, change a material, change a technique, change anything, and keep going. For a long time, it was kind of a race to see how quickly I could finish a piece. And I had this mindset where if I start it, I have to finish it. And in the last few months, I've gotten to the point where I can start a piece, and if I'm not quite sure where to go with it, I'm comfortable just putting it on the shelf and looking at it. I just finished a piece 2 weeks ago that I started 9 months ago. And for me to look at a piece unfinished for 9 months got more and more interesting every day. Because, you know, the brain's like every day, well, what if, what if, what if, what if? So you're constantly, you know, playing that game. But I found that being patient, the idea that finally evolved and finished the piece was well worth waiting for. So my advice to everyone now is try being patient. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Glad I made it. Had the time wrong. So this topic, where are we going and what will we do when we get there, is kind of something I always think about. I'm a retired psychotherapist, and no, I don't practice anymore. I facilitate some meditation groups. And then I ventured into actually taking my artwork seriously. And that happened this year. I've always done art. My kids have always said I'm an artist, and I always said, no, I'm not. But as usual, they're right, I think. So, and then fortunately, I got into this show, which I was really happy about because it's actually a topic that really speaks to me. I think, you know, one of the questions I get most is, how did you come up with that? So I guess what I would say is, I just start. I don't actually know what I'm going to do when I start. I wish I did. And sometimes when I think I know what I'm going to do when I start, it never comes out the way I think it's going to, ever. And sometimes when I try to replicate something I've done, that also doesn't work. So this piece, I guess, what it stirs up for me is meditation retreats that I've been on, and what those have been like, silent retreats that I've gone on, and the impact of what that means to be silent, except for, of course, conversing with your teacher, but not conversing with each other, and this experience of being on your own, but with others, kind of, yeah, it's a good thing. Well, it is, not always, no, sometimes there's a lot of suffering, but sometimes not. And certainly my first experience was more like a honeymoon. This is more like some of my experience other times in meditation, where I'm aware that I'm with others and I'm aware that I'm going somewhere, but I don't know where. And actually I brought this so because it kind of made me think of all of this. This is a quote from Dzigar, I'm not going to pronounce it right, Kongtrul Rinpoche, Opening the Injured Heart. And I have to say my artwork is a lot about my process and who I am and where I'm going. I'd like to think that. And this quote is, it's titled, Look Ahead. The past is important, but not as important as the present and the future. The past has already been lived. It doesn't have to be relived. And so the title of this is, Are We There Yet? Excuse me, my nose is running. And I think that's often the experience of meditation and or being on retreat and or just living. Like, did we get there yet? And so much, I feel like so much of the culture is about getting somewhere as opposed to being where we are. And just a minute about so my background is I grew up around a lot of artists and a lot of artsy people, and fortunately, in my mind, they were good artists, so the influence was helpful. But I never, I never thought to be one of those artists. I just really loved being around it and loved the conversations around it, including architecture. Some of my family members studied with Frank Lloyd Wright, and my great aunt knew Einstein and things like that, you know, kind of big names in my life, but and more a feeling for me that I was around it. And so it really influenced my sensibility and my aesthetic around what I'm doing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Ellen also hosts a meditation on Sundays from 10 to 11. It's donation based, so just come on by on any Sunday. It's every Sunday.
No one turned away.
No one's turned away. And next up we have Christopher Luna.
This piece is a collaboration with Erin Dendrink, who's another one of the artists who you may see at Art at the Cave. On occasion, I've known her for a long time because we're both part of this downtown art community, and we've done a bunch of collaborations together. It includes collage work from me and words from a poem of mine, and she did this drawing. So I'm going to kind of try to talk you through as quickly as I can sort of how this piece came to be. So one of my poetic heroes is Diane de Prima, and I got to meet Diane de Prima when I was a student at the Jack Kerouac School of Disembodied Poetics in Boulder, Colorado. I met her in 1997, and then in 2007, I participated in something that happens that all of you could participate in as well if you'd like, called August Postcard Poetry. And so you get a list of 30 or 31 people. I always forget that song, so I don't know how many days there are in August. You send a postcard with a poem on it every day to one of these people, and you receive one every day. And it's really fun, and I think what it teaches poets is that we are capable of producing more than we think we are. It doesn't mean that all the poems are amazing, but we are capable of doing more than we think we can, you know? So I received a postcard from Diane de Prima, which was already like, and so I wanted to read you the poem that Diane sent me, and then I'll read you the poem that I sent back to her, which is what inspired this. So Diane's poem, which was sent 1907, water of earth, the woman's body, sacred, profaned, air of earth, the word, gone to symbol, any loyalties, any number of nows, give to earth and the mouths that spoke them, the mouths that spoke them, dust, not even his fury. So Diane de Prima wrote something called Revolutionary Letters. So it was like a series of poems that she wrote over 40 years or something like that. And when she had new books out or new chapbooks, there'd be a new version. One of the best known ones is called Rant. And in Rant, there's a line that's repeated, which is, the only war that matters is the war against the imagination. And she says, all other wars are subsumed in it. So it's like no pressure. Now you have to write a poem to your hero, you know. And so I thought if I'm sending a poem to Diane de Prima, I want to write her a poem about, you know, speaking to her and showing her that I am familiar with the work. So the poem, this is not necessarily me, but this is Erin Dendrink interpreting that the poem is about two sort of poetic or artistic friends. And the artistic friend in this case is Harry Lane. And it's kind of a sad part of the story because Harry and I got along and we collaborated on some things, and he's never seen the things that we collaborated on because he gave them to me, I finished them, and he kind of disappeared. Like I didn't see him, he didn't talk to me. It was very like hurtful at the time. So I guess this is supposed to be me and Harry. So here's the poem, I Catalyst for Diane de Prima. And so, and my piece is, because I do collage, you have to get pretty close to see everything that's going on here. There's lettering here, there are very small images. And so and this is just the last stanza of the poem that I lettered onto the piece. I Catalyst for Diane de Prima. We are charged with a responsibility, whether we take on the role of observer, critic, priestess, or shaman. My painter friend is a former Kansas ninja and the reincarnation of 9th century warrior who smokes to quiet the voices in his head and understands that to name may also be to destroy. He brings me finished canvases, which I am invited to amend according to my liking. And I get nervous, my Sharpie holding hand trembling with a sense of obligation. Whatever I choose to add must be right, it must be worthy, must move, must add rather than take away. We get trashed, laugh, and rub our beards, mark of our status for some as revolutionary perverts. We are dangerous, create word bombs to dismantle capitalism and undo the hatred in the human heart, while plotting our respective strategies in the ongoing war against the imagination. So that's what I did.
Okay, so I thought when I saw this show and the title of my show, I thought that my work was a really good fit for it, especially the stuff I've currently been working on. I'm clearly not much of an optimist in response to that question. I'll kind of start with the background of the things that I've been looking at and that have been inspiring my work. I have been looking at a lot of medieval manuscripts, specifically these little doodles in the margins called marginalia. And some of you may have seen them. They're like little things like bunnies killing people or snails killing people. And these little doodles are referred to as le monde renverse, which is means the world upside down. And scholars have talked about, some people kind of write them off as like, oh, they're just kind of like meaningless doodles that monks would entertain themselves with. And other scholars have said they're kind of a critique of the power structures of society. So the idea of the world being upside down, or the natural order of things being kind of just perverted and inverted, is something that's been resonating with me a lot. So that little bird with the knife over there, that little round painting, is also mine, and that is pretty closely like taken from that imagery of like bunny wielding a sword and things like that. And part of the idea behind this is just the world somewhat falling apart. You know, the wildfires and just everything about the environment is just this inevitable like march towards oblivion, and no one's like doing anything about it at all. I mean, I shouldn't say at all, but not nearly enough to make a difference. And one image that really resonated with me was seeing seabird, like baby seabirds that, you know, they're dead and their bellies are full of plastic that their mothers fed them, and just this, you know, the booby, it's kind of, you know, it's a funny animal. He's got googly eyes and he's got a funny name, but it's really this tragic plight that it's stuck in. The round composition is supposed to reference like tondo paintings of like the Madonna and Child, or like a mandala, where it's just this thing that you contemplate and look at, and this bird is like delivering death to you as you stare at it. And this one here, I've been doing a lot of paintings of Venuses from art history. One of the most famous paintings of Venus is by Giorgione, which is the Sleeping Venus, and I think it's from the year 1510, and it's basically this icon of femininity. She's laying with her eyes closed on this like
very comfortable satin sheet in the middle of the wilderness. And I always thought that was really strange because, you know, she's sleeping out there. Anything could happen to her. This painting, it's one of the iterations of the Sleeping Venus that I've been doing. But the idea kind of came to me in my sketchbook after the events of January 6th with the storming of the Capitol and all the attack on women's rights, but also just LGBTQ people and just all of these weird, you know, going with the idea of the world being upside down and backwards, and we're moving in like this backwards direction. One of the thoughts that I had when I was making this sketch for this painting was just like, I want to cleanse this knowledge from my brain. So the working title for this for a while was Eagle Lobotomy, but I changed it. But just I don't know, just like I felt like I was in watching the downfall of Rome or something, just watching our civilization just come apart. So this is Venus. She's supposed to represent the plight of femininity in our modern world. Instead of like this comfortable satin sheet, she's in snow and ice, and it's supposed to like be not comfortable. Also, the halfway in the waters, to me, represents the longing for cleansing or rebirth. I did a little oil sketch a couple years ago during the snowpocalypse on the Willamette River, and just these little rocks and snow and things are things that I, you know, observed directly. All of these are from landscapes, and my shark painting around the corner, they're from landscapes that I've seen in this nation, and they kind of harken back to, are we just about to, okay, yeah. So just the tradition of American landscape painting, and the eagles kind of represents the gross distortion of nationalism and what it's become. All right, thank you.
There you go.
Oh, thank you so much.
And just be careful when you use the mic that it's not hitting your sunglasses or your hands or anything.
These in the back pockets, I look professional. Hi, I'm Jason Litz. And I will try to be very mindful of the 5-minute timeline. So in the beginning, there were cave paintings. I'm just kidding. So this is my piece, and just a little bit of history on it. It was kind of a bit of a challenge. I typically work larger, and so I bought a bunch of these smaller panels, and it's like, okay, well, if I'm going to be doing smaller work, I can kind of do something completely different, right? Which is, I think, really fun and really, it's nice to challenge yourself as an artist, or whatever medium you choose. So pretty simple. Actually, just layers, lots of different layers of just, I tinted a canvas and then used my favorite color, Prussian blue, and just went in through and did some of the imaging stuff. And I put in some of the color, and then just got to grab a paintbrush, and I got to splatter. And it was so cathartic, right? I got to splatter, and I would stand back, and I go, okay, I like that, I like that. Maybe I can splatter some more. And so I did, I splattered more. And so I had these gradations of Prussian blue on a tinted canvas, and so it kind of gives that depth to the diver. Somebody was over at our house, and unfortunately I have a lot of my artwork up on the walls, and somebody said, oh, I really like artwork. So did you grow up on the coast? I'm like, oh no, I grew up in Iowa. Why do you ask? And I'm like, well, because you have a lot of these nautical themes. And it's true. I grew up in Iowa, and I came out here to the Pacific Northwest, and I was just struck by the beauty and just the majesty of the coast. But beyond that, I really like using this diver character as a bit of a metaphor, because I think that in this painting, I think kind of where are we going? I think we try to insulate ourselves, at least I know that's true for me, where we really try to insulate ourselves, but yet we still want this sense of connection. So we have this precious little goldfish in the bowl, and we're really focused on that. And you could use it as a metaphor of people being connected via social media or what we see on TV, and we feel like there's this belonging, right? Like we had something very, very precious, and maybe that there's information that only we know. I mean, this is how cults are formed, essentially. But if that's all you're fed, you think you're really tapped into something, and something that's very, very precious and very, very true. And what you might not be aware of is what your entire environment is, what's behind you, what's around you, what are you actually living in, rather than just what you perceive to be as this very precious reality. And I'm going to insulate myself from everything else except for what I believe and what resonates with me and what I feel I need to protect, and then just completely abandoning everything else that's around us. So that's my time. Thank you very much.
Well, hey guys, my name is Stefanie Adams, and this is my baby. This is the first time I've ever talked to anybody about my art. I've had 5 or so pieces in this gallery in the last 3-4 years, something like that. Before that, not really done a lot of anything. I'm a pretty busy person, 5 acres, husband, kids, all that stuff. If I'm gonna sit down and take my extra time that I have and do something, I need a theme, I need a short window, and I need a deadline. All of my pieces here have been because of open calls. This is absolutely no exception, and I was so thrilled when you told me a few months ago what this was. The way I approach life in general is I wake up in the morning and I go, where am I? What am I? Who am I? And what do I do now? And I just repeat that throughout the day. Go to bed, repeat the next morning. So I love questions like this. So here we go. Where are we going? Physically, when I look around and I listen to the news, what I see is people trying to get to space. People are trying to go to outer space. People are sort of done with this, and they're like, oh, what else can we do? Where else can we go? What are we going to do there? So what you're not seeing from the front are all the travel stickers on the back. Take a look at them a little bit later. Idealistically, this is all the places that I want to be, all the places I want to go. World Peace Day, it's 24/7. Hey, everybody's welcome. International Day for Tolerance, it's now every single day. It's like legislated. So all these wonderful idealistic things. While I was doing this, the song that kept playing in my head and eventually on my phone forever was, what a beautiful world this will be. What a glorious time to be free. Still on repeat. So that's what's going on. I made all these on Canva in about an hour down at the local library. And then I pasted them on this. I tend to collect old, beautiful things. So I just walked into my shop and went, oh, I'll take that one right there. It's an old, banged up suitcase because we've been going places for a very long time. This thing is well used. It's still working. It's gonna be fine. Okay, so this is how we're gonna get there. Everybody needs luggage where they're going. What are we gonna do once we get there? I don't know what we're gonna do in space. I imagine you're gonna try to figure out how to live. You're gonna try to figure out how to breathe. You're gonna try to figure out all this stuff. And when I think back in my life to all the places where I've achieved something that I wanted, or I hit another like little step of enlightenment or whatever, and it's very exciting and very sparkly and very beautiful, and you're in there for a little while. And then you look around and it calms down, and then you're washing the dishes and you're doing the laundry and you're feeding people and you're taking care of your parents. And you're doing all that. You are doing the modern equivalent of chopping wood and carrying water. That's a Zen koan. Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. That's what we do. But once you've achieved your little chapter of enlightenment, you're doing it from a different frame of reference. And that makes all the difference. So then I had to find myself a pail for water and an axe for chopping and find them all used because we've been using these tools forever. So now I feel perfectly ready for the future because I've got my luggage and I've got my tools. I don't think so, except I would like to reference the line from one of Martin Luther King Jr.'s speeches. You know what it is. The arc of moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. That's how I feel, and that's how I will continue to feel.
Thank you, Stephanie. And while she's getting her piece, I wanted to mention, I meant to mention it earlier, Christopher Luna, who was speaking, I don't know if you said it because it's kind of over there, but he hosts a Ghost Town Poetry open mic every second Thursday of the month here at Art at the Cave. And it's a great event, starts at 7, ends around 10. There is an opportunity, there's always a featured poet and an opportunity to share. So you do want to get here a little bit earlier if you want to be part of the mic.
Yeah, I didn't mention it.
Great. Thank you. You just clip this right between your 2 buttons there.
Between my buttons.
Between your buttons.
Woo! How exciting. Hi, I'm Julianne. This is my painting. Can't remember, what did I name this? Out of Idaho. And I try to do paintings that are about me. So I think that art should be self-expression. So all of my paintings, not all of them, I started out being a really traditional landscape painter and then a still life painter, very traditional. And then I decided that I wasn't expressing myself. So I tried to gather images that told my story. And my process is pretty simple, and I have some examples here. Let me just go to, I can't get along without my iPad, to my talk at the cave. And I wish I could project these for you. I bought a projector, and it was so cool. I got it for $35 on Amazon in order to do art talks. And this is the second one that I've given where I haven't been able to use my new projector. But you can just hook it to your iPad, and it works like a slide projector. But both galleries that I've talked at, you couldn't get the gallery dark. So I end up doing this. So much for technology, right? So I start with a still life. This is what I set up in my studio. These are just found objects, rocks from Whidbey Island. That leaf I've painted several times. Being a still life painter, I collect stuff. You have collections of stuff. And I have a box of leaves. My husband goes in the garage and goes, "Really? We need a box of leaves?" Yes, I do. And so that's my leaf. And this was a little puffball I found over at Fort Vancouver. So I save all this stuff, and then I try to make it into a still life. And that's what I did with this one. This is this little setup right here. I didn't like the puffball, so I took it out. And I think I put a nail there. This new series of paintings that I'm working on has to do with the juxtaposition between nature and humans and our relationship to each other. And so I try to put something human-made in my still life, which in this case is the box and the nail. I didn't use the nail either, but the marble and this piece of wood back here being human-made. And then I set it up in my studio like this so I can look at it while I'm painting. It's almost what they call a sight size approach. Have you heard that term? Sight size, where you put your easel right next to what you're painting. So you can look at what you're painting and look at your easel all in one view. So that's how this one started out, and I drew it on the panel. And this is gesso board. I really like gesso board because it's really slick. And some people don't like it because it's real slick, but I like it because you can get this really smooth finish. And I learned about that smooth finish from Juliet Aristides. If you've heard of her, she's written a couple books on classical painting. She taught us to actually take a cuttlefish bone and sand the surface before we put on the last layer, so it was super, super flat. You don't see any brush strokes. It's kind of a surrealist technique, kind of Salvador Dali. And then this is the painting in process. Working from my setup. Then the background has to be from your imagination. Yes?
Your time.
Time up?
Almost, yeah.
Oh,
Just
talk fast.
when you can.
Okay, so this is the last one. So I timed that pretty well, huh? That was the last one. So I do have a show right now over in Portland at Gardino Gallery, where there are 16 pieces in this series. This didn't get in the series because I wanted it to be here. Thank you.
Well, hello, my name is Marshall Miller. I'm an artist based out in Southeast Vancouver. This painting was a little bit of a push for me. It's a little bit out of my comfort zone. My paintings usually surround themes of nature, and this is obviously a little different. But when the open call came out and I saw the prompt, all I could think about was our relationship with technology and where we're heading with it. I know any one of us could pull a small device out of our pockets right about now and access knowledge, a ridiculous amount of knowledge, and be able to communicate with somebody halfway across the world with just tapping a screen within a few seconds. But when is that going to change from us having to have an external device to a computer being within us? It's kind of dark, but you know, it's the future. So kind of with that being said, you know, you'll be able to transmit your thoughts to others. You'll be able to access knowledge just by willing it. You'd be able to communicate your thoughts and your feelings with someone else, not just through words, through over the phone or through a text, but you'd be able to actually have someone feel how you're feeling in real time and not just be sympathetic, but empathetic as well. I could go on and on about the possible benefits of this for one day, but at the same time, this is a new frontier. It's the Wild West. We don't know the consequences of what we're doing. We're kind of playing a little bit with fire. When painting this, I had a quote kind of running through my mind. It's very much inspired by a lot of shows, books, and movies. But one quote in particular was from Jurassic Park. I had a quote in there from Ian Malcolm's Jeff Goldblum's character. They were so preoccupied on whether they could, they never stopped to think if they should. And that kind of always runs through my mind whenever I'm thinking about the future and where we're going. But kind of on the other side of that, this is also a very personal painting to me. It's a little bit of a self-portrait, where I've been, where I'm going, who I am today. You hear a lot of people talking about being right-brained or left-brained, being analytical or being creative. Nobody ever talks about being like mentally ambidextrous. So I've always known I was an artist. I've loved to paint since I was a kid. Took a break there for a few years for college, but my bachelor's degree is in mechanical engineering, and I worked in the semiconductor industry for a while, which is kind of reflected in this painting. This is not only the merging of humanity and technology, but is the merging of my two sides as well, and where I'm going with that. Kind of more on the how this was technically executed. I love texture. You can kind of see, I use a lot of plaster, acrylic, and I also toss in some wood. I use a lot of painter's tape. I can't paint a straight line to save my life. But I use kind of more the texture, the complexity to represent humanity and who we are as people and as humans, and more the kind of clean slate, more simple side to represent efficiency and simplicity for technology. I always get questions about the wood. If you see some of my other pieces, I use a lot more than one piece usually. But to me, it lends kind of a more sculptural element to a 2D piece. And for me, as I kind of mentioned earlier, I love painting nature-themed paintings. But to me, I know I kind of talked about movies a little bit. I've only seen WALL-E once, but I keep thinking about this little robot and this just decimated world carrying like this little sprout. And to me, having this wood represents the continuity of nature for whatever will happen in the future, wherever we're going with technology and our relationship with it, and how it'll always be there no matter what. So that's all I got. So thank you.
So I've really been enjoying hearing everybody talk about their processes, and it's just kind of the theme that I keep hearing is this conversation we have between what's our brain process, our thought process, and our media process. And just really interesting. I love medias. I'm probably more of a printmaker than a painter, but I like working with anything that comes around. And you know, sometimes I drool when I see tar paper and I go, what do I do with that? But anyway, I named this piece Inner Space, Outer Space. And for a long time, I had a gallery that sold quite a bit of my work, and I would, I was playing the blackout bingo card of jobs like a lot of artists do. And I get a piece done and I drop it by, and she said, well, what's the title? And I'm like, I have to title it, and she says, I'm not taking anything else. It's Untitled 1, Untitled 2. And then she'd call me again later in the day, but aren't you going to sign this? So things like, coming up with titles and coming up with signing things that wasn't second nature to me. But anyway, lately I've been thinking about what I'm painting, and I usually write a little piece about the process and what my painting is about. And this goes, the planet changes, the universe expands outward and inward, people get educated, space exploration moves forward, progress covers the planet with concrete. We never get there, we just move into the future. The planet is in peril, but people keep learning new ways, all kinds of ways to be creative, both useful and not useful. And in the future, we will still be me, I will still be me, you will still be you, and our view of the stars will remain. So I'll be brief because that'll move things along.
Thank you.
There it is. I'm Parmalee Paula, and you've probably heard from me before. I have a hearing aid on, and I can hear your questions. That's a good one. I have a couple of degrees in art and a FCC radio operator's license, which is very important. So I always follow the creed here of messy, explorative art. So that I follow, what you're supposed to do here. But essentially, I call myself a social surrealist. So most of my art, I am tackling a social problem or addressing myself to it. The way maybe back in the old days on the post office that you see today. And this particular one, you see the little engine that could. And this has to do with the subterfuge between the disconnect between what society says and what it does, especially for children, right here. And she is she's a kind of child who has been fed one thing and the parents mean another. And so the incarnation of goodness is chasing her, because really in back of that is the banality of evil, which I have here. The little train that could is carrying children to Auschwitz, which is really in the guise of housing development under a really nice sunset, which is really global warming. So what we have here is we're talking about what are we doing, where are we going? Railroad track. This is the painting of a picnic in the park, I guess. Anyway, so I copied those guys and turned them into the future, because when you go back into the way things used to be, they never were that way. And besides, you try to go back and they really are not going to be that way because you didn't get it right. So here is a future cat looking out the window at the desert that can be so deadly and so beautiful in its survival. I had a rule for myself on this, and that is brush only, because I am a sucker for a line, and I just lean on that so much. So I like to do something I'm not so good at. So this is nothing but brush, except for there's this one figure in here, which is, I pasted it on, it's the universal man. And so, questions? Pardon me? I'm sorry.
Paint or fiber?
The paint what?
Is it paint or is it fiber?
Oh, no, it's on an old drape, and it's acrylic. Yeah, and I fixed it. It's like a drape is like canvas. It is made of cotton, so. Yeah.
Is this your cat?
No, it's my grandson's cat. He has 2 white cats, but I used my own cat as a model. I wanted to very carefully look behind him, and or her, I should say her. And so I had, you have all of these things like, how in the world am I going to do a transparent kind of like drape? So fortunately that one worked out, and this one here not so much, but oh well, messy. And I do have a combination of, so I'm doing a little subterfuge on you too, that I draw you in by these nice colors, and there is some evidence of skill here, obviously, because I'm very skilled. But then I kind of mess it up a bit with abstract expressionism, a child's kind of way of painting. So I have all of this in here that draws you in with questions. Oh, this is really pretty. Look at those beautiful colors. And then especially over there. So I'm doing the same thing it is happening to that little girl. I'm doing it to you as a viewer. Hope you appreciate it.
Well, my work is sculptural. Ceramics captured me somewhere along the line and won't let me go. When the theme came up, I immediately grabbed onto Gauguin's process and what he was going through at that time in his life, and it really is one of my favorite artists. I feel like it's not because I have blinders about his life, though there was a lot that attracted me. Attracted to the tropics and attracted to running away from his family responsibilities and devoting himself to art in a big way. And the struggle, the internal struggle that he had. And then the fact that he, I don't know that he ever did it in any of his other paintings, but the fact that he asked those questions on the painting, so he's a little reaching out beyond what he believed that people could see through the visuals to make us really kind of like ask those deeper questions. When the theme came up to me, I thought, oh my God, Gauguin, I have to participate. So I immediately thought of two pieces that I had just recently finished, based on a series that I've been doing that starts out with found object driftwood and then coating with clay and then burning it out and then finding a piece in it. This was the first piece that I put the figurative element in the piece before it was dry. So I'm still working with wet clay here, but I'm also seeing what a lot of people see in their imagination when they see abstract forms. You want to make sense of it. You want to like capture it. So I put the face in there, and then when it came out so pure and so white out of the kiln, with just the right kind of combination of inside outside, I thought that really is asking the great question: where are we going? And the answer is that we don't know, but we are elemental. And this is one of the things that I love about clay, working with clay, is it's so elemental. I think I keep coming back to it over and over again because there's no pretension there. You can go down to the banks of the Columbia and reach down and grab a lump of clay and start to form it. And I think we've been doing this ever since we've been walking on the planet. So it goes way back in time. And it felt to me like that piece captured it. I have to tell a little disclosure here. When I thought of that, I thought of the second piece that I had. I'm not even going to describe it, but when I submitted the piece, both pieces, I had one labeled as where and the other one labeled as what. Only one of them got juried in, so I'm like, there's half the story right there. I can tell you where we're going, but I'm kind of thinking, what do we do when we get there? There's a good question that we're basically left to answer it. Two things that I wanted to say about sculpture, and not so much about my process because it is what it is. One is, if you have not been to the Portland Art Museum to see Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio exhibition, it totally blew my mind, and it's something that everybody who's involved in art ought to go see before September. I think mid-September it's going to close down. But it also is the history of how he got connected up with Portland during the pandemic and all the artists that were involved in the collaboration of that movie. It's mind-boggling, and it's also just totally fun and a strong recommendation. And the second thing I wanted to share was a moment I had. One time I had a good fortune of being in New York, and I went to MoMA, and I was standing in a phenomenal sculpture garden, admiring the sculpture because I have a bent toward that, and I watched the hordes of people coming in through the front door, and they're all heading for the two-dimensional stuff. In fact, I think there was famous paintings that had 50 people standing in front of it, vying for position to get a look at what the painting was. And I sat there in the sculpture garden, and I thought, now what is this that's going on with sculpture? And this is just a theory, but it hit me that sculpture has a little difficulty to it in that every time you move, it changes. And every time you walk around, it means that you kind of got to work to see it all. So as a sculptor, you're kind of like got that in the back of your mind that there's maybe an audience for my work someday, and maybe they are going to react to it this way. So you're constantly turning it and looking at it in different ways. Painters, on the other hand, are dealing with this two-dimensional world that oftentimes has a background. So there's all kinds of complexities going on with the paint, but it's stable in the sense that it's two-dimensional. And I think we, as humans, tend to want to live, especially in modern times, in a two-dimensional world. We drive around in our cars, not like they're a sculptural monstrosity, but rather that they're this incredible thing. Turn on the music, look at the view, blah, 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 blah. Here we are living in this two-dimensional world that doesn't have everything that three dimensions demands of us. It was a great question, great philosophical question. I don't know what the answer is, and it's only my theory, but I'm thinking you need to spend a little more time with sculpture. You need to walk around it and relate to it and kind of ignore the background when you're looking at it. As opposed to a painting, you can just lose yourself in a painting, I think, so easily. We're all image oriented. Anyway, that's my time, and thank you so much.
I work with better than 95% salvage materials. So my creations are created from salvage materials. My least favorite and most often asked question is, where did you find that cabinet? I didn't find it, I made it. But I made it out of salvage materials. My process involves multiple layers. A big part of my process happens in my slumber. I dream my work. I dream it in detail. I construct it. I figure out what it's going to be. And I get up and I make little rudimentary drawings and a sketchbook that I keep next to my bed. And with little notes about what my thoughts are. I generally know what it's going to look like before I start. And I always know what the title is before I start. The title comes first. This piece is called "And Then They Brought Us to the Train Station." I work with artifacts. I'm fascinated with the notion of artifacts as art and art as artifacts, vice versa. I've also been working for the past several decades where my work for me has a social, political, or personal statement that addresses the past, present, and future. I'm working with historical bits and pieces of things. The artifacts, the woods that I'm finding, all had previous lives somewhere, and they came from disparate parts of the universe, which were never necessarily meant to go together. But in my mind, they come together in this form. When I submitted to this piece for this show, the question of where are we going, what will we do when we get there, this piece I created a few years ago, but addresses people who are unwillingly or unsuspectedly transported somewhere where they don't necessarily know where they're going. This particular piece represents happenings of the mid-1900s, excuse me, and 1940s particularly. It addresses Nazi Germany. It also addresses the United States. We have the American eagle or the German eagle. We have the train, which is the mode of transportation, and we have Japanese legs. So but it was created at a time when here in the United States in recent history, we talked about shipping people and we witnessed people being shipped. And so that's what this piece is about. The reason I create things that have a social, political, or personal meaning is because I'm a social, political, personal person. I started making art that had made a statement back in the mid-'80s when I was dealing with the AIDS crisis and dealing with a lot of friends who were dying. And I started making stuff about that. And that has morphed over the years into a more broader spectrum of looking at things that are happening in the world. Like I said, I dream my work. Dreams have been a big part of my life ever since I was a little kid. I have really, really vivid dreams. Not always pleasant. some absolutely horrific, and some are just really wonderful. In recent years, I've been able to channel those things into making art. And that's been a really wonderful sort of process for me, to be able to create in my dream state and then get up and build it. I don't know how many times I've been working on a project and I'm like, I need that little thing, whatever that little thing is. I'm not quite sure what it is. Go to bed. I know the inventory of stuff I have in my basement. I'll dream it. I get up, I walk over, pick it up, and it fits. It's crazy. But you know, that's the way my brain works, and that's the way my process works. I like to think of myself as an easygoing, free-flowing spirit, and then that somebody pointed out, Dan, you put things in boxes. Yeah. And pretty tightly constructed boxes. And I'm like, yeah, that's part of me as well. But this this show to me has been really quite, you know, when I've come to it a couple of times and walked around and looked at everybody's interpretation of this theme and what the jurors saw when they combined it together. And it really sort of highlights to me the sort of nature, the humanity of all of us on our journeys, on how we're moving through the world and how we see things, each individual thing uniquely, yet we're able to convey them through various means of art. I'm going to give a little plug. I've got another show going on. It's at a place called Arrowwood in Portland. It's a restaurant. I'm doing a salon-style discussion this coming Wednesday. There's cards on the table. And other than that, I think I'm going to, that'd be it. Take it away.
Yeah, so that's the end of the speakers. Any questions for any artists?